Welcome back to the Female Fitness Podcast. It has been a while, but there's good reason for that. If you're watching the video, you'll see that I'm in a different setting. And that is because I've moved into my own place and I couldn't be happier about it. I am genuinely so over the moon, so at peace to have my own space again. I have lived on my own before and I don't know, I love living on my own. I love living with other people as well, and I've been through phases of my life where I've adored living with friends and things like that, but just having my own space right now is so right for me and has brought me so much peace. However, I have had to take a little bit of a break from recording the podcast to prioritize getting settled and to deal with all of the things that you have on your plate when you do move into a new place. And even though I have moved so many times over the last few years, which you guys will know if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you'll have probably heard from me from a lot of different cities in the UK and also like all over the world as well. So you'll know that I've been in so many different places, really hopped around a little bit, but I would like to think that I'm going to stay put for a little bit. What now? I definitely feel kind of ready for some more stability in my life and to just feel a bit more settled, a bit more stable, to just stay in one place for a while, to have a place that I can call my home. So I'm very much looking forward to making the most of this chapter that I'm in right now. And in today's episode of the podcast, I wanted to talk about some of the things that I have done to help me continue to run a successful business and to continue to show up and to continue to provide a great quality of service for my clients whilst moving and having had a lot on my plate, and also whilst training for a backyard ultra marathon, because I don't know if I've actually mentioned that on the podcast. Maybe I have, maybe I haven't, I don't know. But anyway, I'm training for a backyard ultra, which is the end of August. And for anyone that doesn't know, a backyard ultra is essentially you do laps. So we're doing it in a race course, it's Haydock race course, and you do 5K loops. However, with a backyard ultra, what usually happens is you do a lap on the hour. So say you do 5K in half an hour, you would then have like half an hour to rest, to eat, to do whatever else before you go for your next 5K. And you keep doing those 5K loops for as long as you can to cover as much distance as possible until you literally can't go any longer. This backyard ultra is a little bit different for two reasons. One, it is a 12-hour time cap, so it's as many laps as you can do in 12 hours. But on top of that, I have entered as a team with Beck and Steph, two of my good friends. So slightly different to a standard backyard ultra, but that's what I'm training for. That's the end of August. And I am also going to go for a half marathon PB towards the back end of this year. So I've been progressing with those running goals and working with a running coach in order to do so, whilst also moving house and also running a successful business. So it has been a lot. However, I feel like I've done really well at one, cutting myself some slack and allowing myself to pull back in the areas which I've needed to pull back in order to allow myself to perform well in the areas that matter most. And I also feel like I've done a really good job of kind of managing it all rather than kind of seeing certain areas dip as a result of having a lot on my plate. I just feel like I've really done well with it. Yes, there's been days where it's been hard or I've been tired or I've felt overwhelmed. Of course, there's been those days, but on the whole, I feel like I've done a really good job of like moving the needle forwards in all areas rather than seeing like one of my goals have to be sacrificed because of everything that I've had going on. So I wanted to share a little bit about what I feel like has enabled me to do that. And a lot of, I think the reason I want to share this with you is, like I said earlier, I've moved so many times and I know that it can be a really stressful period of time, it comes with so many different tasks that you kind of forget about, and it's hard to navigate. But I have done it so many times that it has given me, I've learned a lot through doing it so many times. And I now feel like I am quite well equipped at dealing with busy periods because I have had a lot of them to go through, and I have made mistakes. I've learned lessons. I have taken a lot away from those experiences. So I hope that I can share those things with you in the hope that you don't have to go through it as many times as I have had to have a smoother run at it. And this podcast, although I'm talking about it in the context of balancing a move with training for a half marathon and running my own business, your exact circumstances don't have to match that for you to benefit from what I'm going to talk through. It could be that you're just going through a really busy, stressful period of life and you're trying to navigate your fitness goals alongside that. Or it could be that you're trying to run a coaching business, but you've also got a lot on your plate in your personal life, or you're going through a move yourself, or you're traveling, or whatever it may be. This podcast will benefit you, whatever your circumstances are. So tune in. If you're someone who cares about balancing goals across multiple areas of your life, this podcast is for you, essentially. And I really hope that you enjoy it. Please get out a notepad and pen if you want, or get out the notes app on your phone so that you can make some notes as you go through. And as always, I am an open book. So if you think of any questions throughout listening to this podcast, if there's anything that you want to talk to me about, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. My DMs are open on Instagram. You can just drop me a message anytime. My Instagram is Danny Bosworth. That's DANNI BOSWORTH. Just drop me a message and I will get back to you as soon as I can. So, on to the podcast. I moved at the start of the month. So, the first thing that I did was I allowed myself to take a step back from certain non-essential areas of my business. And one of them was the podcast. So I absolutely love recording the podcast, as you guys will know if you listen to it. And it is also something that really benefits my business because honestly, any inquiries from anyone that listens to the podcast, they're always great quality clients because you guys who listen to the podcast, you know me, you know how I work, you know how I coach. And so it's a very smooth transition. If any of you decide you would like support with your goals, if you reach out, generally you're always incredible clients to work with. We're such a good fit because you know me, and it's very easy for me to get to know you when you are someone who listens to this podcast who has similar values, who has similar goals. So it is something that really benefits my business. However, it is my clients and my service, my coaching service will always come above the additional extras, such as the podcast. And I knew that if I was to have tried to continue with the podcast, as well as everything else, and not have made that adjustment, I would have probably have seen my quality of service to my clients take a hit, which is not acceptable for me personally. So I chose to take a break from the podcast to ensure that I was able to continue to deliver a very high level of service for my clients that I am working with. And that is, it very much ties into one of the podcasts that I recently recorded where I discussed knowing when to give yourself permission to pull back and when to push through. And I do think that that is a skill that has to be learned over time. And it's a very individual thing because it depends on like your circumstances, your health status, your capacity at the time, where you're at in your business, where you're at in your fitness journey, um, or like so many different factors, your stress levels, all sorts, on when it's appropriate to push through and when it's appropriate to pull back. But it is one of the best skills you will ever learn. And it's identifying, like I said, okay, sometimes there are periods of your life where your capacity for, say, work is going to be reduced because you have other things on your plate, such as a house move. And you have to therefore make the decision to pull back on the things that you can afford to sacrifice in order to keep your quality high in other areas, in the areas that matter the most to you. So that's the decision that I made. Okay, I'm going to take a bit step back from the podcast. Another thing I did with social media, again, I allowed myself to take a little bit of a step back. Now, something that I will say is that if I had known with more notice when I was going to be moving, what I would have probably done is I would have recorded some podcast episodes in advance so that I had them backloaded, and therefore the podcast uploads could remain weekly without me having to actually record them in real time. And I would have also probably prepared more social media content. I had some in advance because I always have some backed up, but I didn't have as much as I would have needed to stay consistent with posting every day. So if I had more notice for the house move, I would have created more content for socials in advance, and I would have recorded more podcast episodes in advance to ensure that I was able to remain consistent without having to do the work in real time. But what happened was I went to view the house and it was available immediately. I loved it, I wanted it, and I think my move-in date was maybe a week after the viewing, maybe 2 weeks after the viewing max. So I didn't actually have time to prepare as much content as I wanted in advance. And obviously, as soon as I decided that I wanted to move in, that's when I had to start going through all of the paperwork, the reference and checks, and all of that stuff. So it kind of was just immediately a lot more on my plate, and I didn't have time to prepare in the way that in an ideal world I would have if my moving date was further down the line. So that is one, if you're a coach listening to this, or actually anyone else, like if you have a move further down the line, obviously if you can plan certain things ahead to reduce your workload in the moment but enable you to still show up, that's the best case scenario. But I personally didn't, and there's a time and a place of just cutting yourself some slack and being like, no, I'll take that off my plate for now. And, social media posting and the podcast were two things that I allowed myself to take a step back with. And I had no regrets with that at all. And actually, I think I maybe had just under a week where I didn't post on social media and I didn't create any content. It may be, I'm going to estimate it, maybe it was 5 consecutive days that I didn't post for. It wasn't that long. However, I did actually find that after taking those 5 consecutive days, when I posted again, I was really excited to post and I had lots of really good ideas. So, actually, in hindsight, that break probably benefited me in that way, as well as it taking something off my plate when I needed to prioritize other things in that moment. It also gave me a little bit of a break to reignite that passion and spark for social media content creation, and that it kind of like ignited my creative juices, my creativity again. So I actually think that break was really good for me. And the same with the podcast, like I've been so excited to come back to it as a result of cutting some slack with it. Whereas if I'd have tried to push through with everything, even if I was able to do everything, if I managed to pull it all off and do all the things, I would have been exhausted by now. Like I probably wouldn't be excited to come on here and record a podcast. I wouldn't have as much to offer, and I would have probably been kind of teetering on burnout, which isn't productive for our long-term success, like I've spoken about before. So I'm so glad I allowed myself to cut myself some slack. And another thing I did is there are certain things when it comes to moving house that for me are just so time consuming and also I don't enjoy, that I have made the decision to delegate. Whereas in the past, I would have just tried to do literally everything myself and I wouldn't have done this. So, as an example, we had a bit of a nightmare when I first moved in, and I had a bed already, which was at my nan's house. And basically, me and my mum's partner went over with a van to my nan's house, got the bed in the van, drove it over here, and then it wouldn't go upstairs because the stairs here are like a tight bend, and I just didn't. I didn't even think about it. I don't know. It just didn't even come to my head of whether the bed was going to go upstairs, but it wouldn't go upstairs. So because of that, and the bed would there's no way of taking it down. It split into two, but it didn't split any further down than that. So we literally couldn't go up the stairs. The only option for me was to buy a bed from IKEA or somewhere else where it was flat packed to get it upstairs to be built. And that would be my way of getting upstairs. And the same with any other furniture, it kind of had to be like either to put down into a lot of different parts or flat packs to get it up the stairs. Nothing was going to fit up there. So I was kind of like, oh God, it means a lot more money. Obviously, I've had to buy furniture that I didn't think I'd have to buy. And that has been like so gutting for me because I already had all this stuff and I literally couldn't get it upstairs. So I have spent a lot of money, which I didn't really want to spend and I wasn't planning on spending, but it is what it is. It's done now. And there was no other option, and I just wanted to get in and get comfortable. But yeah, one thing that I knew would be so time consuming for me would be building furniture, such as a bed. And I am also rubbish at building furniture. I am so bad. So if I had tried to build that bed on my own, one, it would have taken hours of my time, which I didn't have. And actually, those hours would be better spent on my business, on work, and on showing up for my clients. But secondly, I'd have probably built a bed that would have fallen down or something at some point because that is how bad I am at building furniture. So it was just so worth it for me to pay for one of the guys from IKEA to come and build it. So that's what I did. Whereas in the past, I'd probably just tried to do it on my own. So that's an example of the type of thing what I'm saying. Like I actually see it as it's so much more worth my while to spend a little bit more money and pay someone to build it than spend hours building it myself and lose out on time that I could be spending on my work and also waste energy and probably build a bed that needs rebuilding at some point because I'm really bad at building it. So little things like that, I wasn't afraid to delegate. Another example is I have used a meal prep company and I've spoken about this on Instagram. They are a company called Thrive. I absolutely love their meals and I have been a paying customer for the last few weeks, whilst just in the run up to moving house. I used them then because everything was really busy and I was living at mum's and cooking in the kitchen was really stressful. So I used them then for a couple of weeks. Then the first week of moving in here, or the second, I can't remember which one it was, I bought them again and I actually spoke about them on my stories off the back of that very organically, like I was a paying customer, I just shared that I really liked their meals. And then they reached out to me and offered me a link to share with you guys as an affiliate. Um, so I am now an affiliate, but I was talking about them before I was, like when I was genuinely a paying customer, because they are the first meal prep company I have used that I have actually enjoyed because their meals first of all, taste really good. A lot of meal prep companies, I find that their meals are really dry and also they're just a bit boring, the meals and bland. Whereas Thrive, they've all been unreal. Like there's loads of lovely curries. There was the satay chicken, which I loved. There's salmon dishes, prawn dishes, all sorts, and they're really fresh. You can kind of tell they're fresh. And they just taste unreal. So, and it saved me so much time and energy because, like I said, I was living at mum's when I first used them. There was lots of us in the kitchen. It was quite stressful having to cook around everyone else, and all of that jazz. That made my life so much easier from then. But even now, it's just like whilst I've been so busy, not having to cook dinner for myself, but also being able to have lots of variety because when you live on your own, a lot of you will probably be able to relate to this. If I buy like a big pack of chicken, I have to eat chicken every day. Whereas sometimes I don't want to eat chicken every day, and also it's good for our health to include variety in our diet, and it's good for our relationship with food and our enjoyment of nutrition. And so, yeah, I don't really want to have the same foods every single day if I can avoid it. So Thrive or whatever other meal prep company, or just being savvy with things allows you to incorporate that variety as someone living on their own, as someone who is single. So it's been really good for me from a health perspective as well as from a convenience perspective. And I'll just pop a few of them in the freezer and some of them in the fridge and then use them for like my evening meal. And then I'll just have simple lunches and breakfast. So yeah, I invested in Thrive. I was a paying customer. I was going to say client, but customer with Thrive. And now I am an affiliate for them, which has happened really organically. But I was planning on, again, delegating that task of cooking to a meal prep company. And that made my life so much easier whilst I was moving. So I do think if you're able to do that when you're going through really busy periods, taking those little things off your own plate can be an absolute game changer and can really help with the smooth running of things. So that really, really helps. On top of that, I made sure that I planned my week out in advance every week, which I do most of the time anyway. But I was really on top of it whilst I was moving and everything because there were certain days where I'd have to be in the house for Wi-Fi fitting appointments or things being delivered and lots of other things. I was also back and forth between mine and mum's to begin with because I didn't have Wi-Fi fitted until literally Friday. I've only just got my sofa in. Like, there's lots of things that have only just been sorted. So I was all over the place, and therefore I needed to make sure that I had a solid game plan, a solid plan of action, and I was planning my weeks out in advance rather than just being scrambled and moving through the week. So that is something that I did. And also, when I got back to social media content after that like less than a week break, I allowed myself to be a little bit less frequent with it than I usually am, just because I knew that maybe I needed that if I wanted. And then I made sure that I was capitalizing on creating content which didn't take a huge amount of time to create. So it might have been, for example, I was using training videos, like I was already spending that time in the gym training. So to then record some of my sets and later put some text over it and add an informative caption wouldn't have taken as much time as like sitting and recording talking head reels. So you'll have noticed that I haven't recorded any talking head reels over the last month. If I've posted any, they've been pre-recorded. Um, and that is for a reason because I knew that that would be more time consuming for me. And I decided to choose to produce content that was less time consuming to allow me to focus on the house move, get everything sorted, and do all that jazz through a really hectic period of my time. So I think that the kind of underlying message there is if you have any parts of the running of your life that can be simplified or that you can just generally make easier, or creating content, for example, if you can capitalize on the things that you're already doing and make the most of that to create content and let it look a little bit different rather than being a perfectionist with it, that is so helpful during times like these. And as people in the fitness industry, as coaches, we tend to be perfectionists. So we want to try and tackle those perfectionist tendencies because sometimes those perfectionist tendencies stop us from showing up and therefore stop us from seeing the growth that we want to see. So a part of, me allowing myself to be flexible with the form of content that I was producing and putting out there in the world and to capitalize on the things that I was already doing to create content out of that was helping me challenge those perfectionist tendencies as well as making my own life easier. So there's a kind of double win in that, I guess. Another thing that I made sure I did was I have stayed on top of reading and journaling because they are two things that really help me keep my mind in a good spot and help me feel my best. And I knew that I had to do those, keep those things in place as opposed to sacrificing them, because if I had sacrificed those things, that is where I would have probably started to spiral a little bit, where I would have struggled a little bit more. It's so important, especially through busy periods where it's easy for those little things to slip. It's extra important to invest in them to keep your mind in a good spot and to keep yourself functioning as well as you possibly can. There was days where I was absolutely exhausted from building furniture and moving around and stuff. And it would have been very easy to be like, yeah, I haven't got time to journal today, or like, I haven't got time to read. But actually, those things make me more efficient, productive, creative, energetic. And so it was so worth it to spend those 5 minutes in the morning reading my book or journaling. And I do allow myself to be flexible with those things, absolutely, and do what I feel like at the time is going to be the most beneficial thing for me to do, whether it's actually, reading a book and switching my brain off and escape into a fantasy land, or whether it's, again, my journal out and working through my feelings and emotions, or brain dumping or going through, business ideas and things like that. Um, but I think it's so important to identify what helps you stay in a good spot, what helps you show up as your most creative, productive, best functioning self, and to stay on top of some of those things as like a fundamental baseline, even through difficult periods, especially through difficult periods where your headspace is likely to maybe take a hit. Or it's easy to sack them off. So create routines with those things. First thing in the morning, for example, I will journal or read every day. I'm currently reading The Psychology of Money on my Kindle, and I have a fantasy book. I'm reading Onyx Storm at the moment, which is my physical book. Because I have a physical book for myself, which is usually fantasy, it's usually escapism, something like that. And then I'll have an educational book on my Kindle or an audio book, and I then have my journal separate to that. So that's a little bit about the things that help me stay in a good spot anyway. And I do try and switch off in the evening from my phone. Now, I will fully hold my hands up and admit that when I first moved in, I found a really bad habit that creeped in for me was scrolling on my phone at night. So that is one thing that I did struggle with. And I think it was I like to reflect on these things and think about why that happens or like what I'm using it for so that I can tackle it moving forwards. And I think it was just because I had so much on my mind to sort that I was looking for something to like. A, a friend once said to me that he called scrolling social media smooth braining because it's like you completely switch off your brain, like you're not having to actually, well, really we should consume social media and think about the things that we're consuming, but often we consume social media in a very like mindless way. We'll like doom scroll and switch our brains off. And I think that it was kind of me escaping all of this like never-ending to-do list in my head and just seeking that like I'm just going to switch my brain off right now type of thing. That escapism and something to distract myself from everything that I had on my brain. So yeah, I think I was kind of using it like that, maybe for a bit of dopamine, maybe because I was obviously I've moved into a house and I'm living on my own for the first time in a really long time, whereas I'm used to having people around now. So maybe it was an element of that as well. Um, but it's something that I've really been able to kick mostly over I'd say the last week and a half have been so much better with it. And I have been actually relaxing in the evening, whether it's having a shower, reading. Sometimes I'll phone a friend or something like that, but that's fine for me because it's not dead brain doom scrolling. And I've been much better about getting off my phone. But it is definitely something that creeped in. And the reason I wanted to benefit that, the reason I wanted to mention that is because I'm human like you. And having phases where you slip back into bad habits is nothing to be ashamed of. It's not like you're human. Social media is literally designed to keep us on there. It's designed to be addictive. It's designed to grab our attention. It provides us with a dopamine hit. It allows us to smooth brain, and it does have benefits. And it's really important to recognize that and to recognize that like there's nothing wrong with you if you do fall back into habits of dead scrolling and stuff like that. But it's being um what's the word? It's using your initiative to ask, what am I doing this for and is it serving me? And is there a better way in which I could meet my needs in this moment? And am I avoiding any feelings or emotions that actually I need to sit with? And asking all of these really helpful questions so that you don't just fall into using the behavior as a coping mechanism or whatever it is, doing the thing that has potentially harmful effects, and then never coming out of that. It's like asking, okay, why am I doing that? What purpose is it serving? What do I actually need? What feelings and emotions are coming up? Like these are the things that I always ask myself quite regularly because I am interested in personal growth and being the best version of myself, both personally and professionally. So, yeah, that's a habit that I've kind of kicked a little bit. And I finally feel like everything's coming together in the house. It's making me so happy. I've got like my sofa in. got a shoe organizer that came today, which literally gives my brain so much peace and happiness. And I've been still training, obviously, for the ultra marathon. So to give you a bit of context on that, I'm working with a running coach because yes, coaches have coaches too. I could coach myself for it, but quite frankly, I don't want to. And if I had that on my plate as well to program my own runs as well as everything else, I think I might have combusted. So it has made seeking help from a coach has enabled me to progress without it feeling like a stressor because it's meant that every one of my training sessions and my runs, I have not had to think about too much. I am actually still programming my own resistance training, but that's literally second nature for me now anyway. Like I can do it without even thinking about it. Running is a little bit different because you obviously have to adjust it weekly based on the prior week's performance and how you respond in. Um, and you have to be very adaptable with your running. Like you have to deload where necessary. You have to make sure it's literally progressing every single week if you have a specific goal that you're working towards. So it's different to gym-based training where will do the same or very similar things from one week to another to progress. Running needs changing and adapting. So to have a running coach has made that process so much easier and has enabled me to actually enjoy my runs and enjoy progressing with those goals whilst also having a lot on. So it's just felt like much less of a stressor to have someone sort that for me. And I have a lot of coaches as clients who I program for, and it just means that you can enjoy your training so much more and you can focus on your clients rather than being like, oh gosh, I've also got a program for myself. And it also, I think it's really important to bear in mind that, like, even if you're a coach, you can never know so much that you're not going to benefit from guidance because having an objective view on things is completely different to try and navigate your own processes. And you'll always learn something from the person you hire, the coach or mentor that you hire. There's always room for improvement. Even Olympic athletes have coaches who are literally at the top of their game because they know that there's always tweaks that they can make to improve. So having a coach is invaluable no matter where you're at from a knowledge perspective and an experience perspective. And it is so hard to make the right calls when you are coaching yourself because you have emotions and feelings and life gets busy, life gets stressful, and it just makes the process so much easier and more enjoyable if you've got someone to call the shots, to tell you when to rest, to tell you when to push on, to be there to support you when things get hard or hurdles come up, to give you an objective view on things and bring your attention to things that you might not have noticed in yourself, thought processes that might be coming up, different angles on training videos. They may notice things that you're not picking up on because you're too involved and up close to your own experience and your own processes to notice those things. And sometimes we get blinded by focusing on like really heavily on one specific area or by feelings or emotions or obstacles that we don't realize certain things that, we have room for improvement in. So having a coach is absolutely invaluable. And in my opinion, it means that you get to your goals so much quicker, no matter who you are, no matter what your experience is, and you enjoy the process so much more. So yeah, having a coach for the win. And if I also, as a coach, if I didn't invest in coaching, what would that say about my perception of the value of my own career? That's the question. I think if you're a coach, like in you invest in a coach, it shows that you value your own profession and you see the value in investing in that. And I think it's also a really great form of kind of practicing what you preach as well. So yeah, having a running coach has been great. Doing 3 runs a week. For the first couple of weeks, they were all steady runs to just ease into the swing of things. I did a 5K time trial prior to those 2 steady weeks. 5K time trial, I was absolutely over the moon with. Got a really good time, hit my fastest ever 5K. I did that on my own without this coach. And then when I started with the coach, did a couple of weeks of really steady runs, 3 runs a week. And then this week I started with some speed work. So I did an easy 5K towards the start of the week. I did some speed work midweek and I did a 13K easy pace run yesterday. And then I have the same speed work again next week. And I think my long run progresses to 14K next week. So it's nice, steady progression, feeling really good. What I will need to start doing before or in the run up at some point to the backyard ultra is I'll have to start splitting my runs to kind of to simulate the backyard ultra. I think simulate is the right word. The backyard ultra, where I'll be doing 5K and then I'll have an hour's rest whilst Beck and Steph run, and then I'll be going again. So I need to get used to stopping and starting, which is something that I've obviously not really had practice with before. So that's something that I need to start to incorporate at some point, and also just getting used to eating in that rest and then going again. So we'll let you know how I get on with that. And then I'm just carrying on with my resistance training as usual, doing full body sessions so that my legs aren't battered, so I'm able to progress my running and feel good and recover well. And may do three, I'll be doing like between 2 and 3 sessions a week, full body sessions, probably now in the run up to the ultra and the half marathon. Then we'll reassess then and go from there. And the lovely thing is I've got quite a lot of clients doing races over the coming months as well. So it's really nice to like almost be training alongside them. Like it's such a lovely experience. And to be kind of going through the same thing as them at the same time is amazing. And to be able to support them with that, but also kind of be in it with them in a way. It's just great. So yeah, I'm loving that. So yeah, that's a bit of a kind of update, I guess, on where I'm at, but living alone is the best at certain times, obviously. Like one day, if I meet a great partner and like live with them, hopefully that will be a really positive experience too. But I do like right now for me, living at home is just great. Living alone is great. And I personally love my own company. So let me know if you can relate. But I hope you have a great rest of your day, guys, whenever you listen to this. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate every single one of you, and I appreciate you being patient with me during the little break that I had from recording the podcast. If you have any questions, please reach out. I'm always here for you. And if you're interested in coaching, now life has settled down, I have got space to take on some new clients, and I would absolutely love to work with you. So please reach out if you are interested in some support with your goals or in mentorship as a coach. I would love to work with you, especially if you listen to this podcast, because like I said, inquiries through the podcast are always 10 out of 10. You're 10 out of 10 humans, what can I say? I appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next one.